Quad City man recovering tonight after falling down into a ditch on his tractor and getting caught under it there for hours. It happened in Moline at Glenwood Drive and 19th Street. Police say the man was mowing the lawn around the corner when he got too close to the edge. Witnesses say the man was trapped for 2.5 hours before anyone knew he was missing.
For over 30 years, I've had the privilege of pastoring the church that sits right on the other side of this ravine. My wife and I moved here to the Quad Cities in the early 80s with a 7-month-old boy. Since then, we've had 2 more boys, and we raised them here, right in this area, right near this ravine. Sometimes the boys even would get down in here and play as little boys. You might wonder, why am I standing in the bottom of a ravine to talk to you today? Well, that has to do with an event that happened on May 25th, 2012 that changed my life and proved to me the reality of the God that I serve and reminded me of the truth that I've been speaking of to people for over 30 years and talking about. May 25th of this year was a Friday. It was a beautiful day, and Friday's my day off, and so I'm in the office most of the week, and so I enjoy getting outside on my day off and kind of piddling around the yard, doing a little yard work, and I enjoy mowing the grass. And the church had just purchased a new riding lawnmower. I was kind of excited about using it and being able to mow some in front of the houses that we own. And so I did so that afternoon. And when I finished that little project, I almost put the lawnmower away, but then decided at the last minute, you know, I think I'll mow this little strip here in front of the ravine, between the road and the ravine. And so I proceeded over here behind me to mow this strip of grass up at the top of the ravine. That would prove to be a decision that would have a lot of consequences attached to it. The mower I was using that day has a hydrostatic clutch, which means you don't have a brake pedal. You just let up on the forward pedal or the reverse pedal and the mower stops. You press to go and you let up to stop. Well, I wasn't used to that yet. I'd just used it one other time the week before. Actually, I'd mowed in the same area alongside the ravine. And I had noticed the week previous that I'd missed a little spot along a rock terrace that the neighbors have. And I was concentrating that day on catching what I had missed the week before. And so I was looking down to see where I was mowing, and knowing that as I would turn left around the edge of that terrace, the ravine would be in front of me, and I would need to turn right to avoid going into the ravine. But as I focused on what I was mowing, when I looked up, I realized I had gotten too close to the ravine. And I panicked in that moment, having just a split second to make the right decision. And instead of just letting up, I actually pressed down on the forward pedal, sending me into the ravine. When the tractor began to plunge forward, it was a strange moment for me, unlike any I'd ever had in my life, because I knew what was coming. I knew it was too late to make any more decisions. It was just kind of holding on for the ride. As the tractor began to plunge down toward into the ravine, as soon as the front tires hit, I was thrown off and began to tumble down the ravine back behind me here, bouncing along uncontrollably. I still remember that feeling. I can remember the everything spinning and landing time after time as I tumbled down. The neat thing about that moment, though, was I specifically remember the thoughts that went through my head as I was bouncing down the ravine and thinking, I can't believe this isn't hurting any more than it does. It was as though God had His hand underneath me and was putting a pillow every place that I landed. Now, if you look behind me, you can see there's no pillows there, just limbs and debris and dirt. And yet God was protecting me each step of the way. As I came to a halt finally, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the tractor coming behind me as it bounced down the ravine, and I knew it was going to land on top of me. And I braced myself, but sure enough, the tractor landed right on my back. The blades on my back, fortunately, they had stopped because of the safety mechanisms, or I wouldn't be here today. But even as the tractor, 400 pounds in weight, landed on top of me, God protected me because there was no pain involved when the tractor hit me. I'm thankful for God's protecting hand. So this is where I ended up, on this pile of sticks, laying face down with the tractor on top of me. I had a limb that was underneath my shin, and then the tractor mower deck laying on my foot, pressing down against it, cutting off the blood circulation to my left foot. My right foot was also pinned underneath the tractor, although it didn't have the same kind of pressure. And so I was stuck. I tried moving the tractor off of me, but some of these limbs had it kind of pinned down and it wouldn't go on up over. And so I needed somebody's help. I looked at my watch when I first got down here and it was 10 minutes after 3. I knew my wife would be leaving about 3:30 for work, and about 3:30 I yelled a little extra loud for help, hoping maybe she would hear me. But 3:30 came and went. She couldn't hear me as she left for work. About 5 minutes to 4, I knew my son would be leaving to go to work, and he'd be riding his moped from home right past this area, right along the road up here. Well, 5 minutes to 4 came, and I yelled, and he went by, actually, and I heard him as he went by in his moped, but he couldn't hear my yells for help. One other opportunity came at 4:30 when the ladies that work on Fridays in the church office would be leaving to go home. I yelled during that time, and hopefully they would hear me, but they couldn't hear me either. And so 4:30 came and went, and I had no more opportunities left. Nothing else to hold on to but my faith in a God that I knew would know where I was at. As you might can imagine, I did a lot of praying during those moments. Everything in the natural of my hopes were gone, but I clung to my faith in the God that I've believed in all of my life, a God who created us in His own image and likeness, who formed us in our mother's womb, a God who knows us and where we're at all times, a God who loves us and cares for us. And I knew that if all of those things that I have believed and preached all my life were true, I was going to be okay. If they weren't true, I was in big trouble. You see, one of the passions of my life has been to study and to talk about what we call apologetics. We live in a world where many biology books tell us that we're just evolved creatures, that we really weren't created, that we don't have a real eternal purpose. We have the Bible, though, that we cling to, of God's holy word that tells us that He made us and that we have an eternal purpose. All of that was on the line for me that day. If God was real, I knew that I could trust that He would come to my rescue. But if He wasn't, I was in big trouble. As I laid here in those moments and minute after minute went by, I had such a gambit of emotions. There's times I felt peace knowing that God was with me and somehow He was going to get me out of this. Then there was other moments, I must admit, that the fear would take over. The thoughts of knowing my wife wouldn't get off work till 11:30 that night, and that would be the first time I could even think of that somebody might come looking for me. Knowing that it could even be the next day before anybody would even think that I might be missing or in trouble. And so in the midst of all of that, it was this battle between fear and then the peace that would come when I'd remember I'm not alone. And it was in those moments that I knew my faith was really being tested, the things that I believe about God. But at 20 minutes to 6, a neighbor came by, and God had heard my prayer and answered my prayer, sent somebody who did not even plan to be in town this way to throw a limb in the ravine, and he heard my cries, and the rescue began.
Thursday, I was at work in Detroit, Michigan, and I got finished with work at about noon. My son was playing baseball here at Moline Little League down at Riverside at 8 o'clock in the evening. I wanted to make his baseball game. It's important for me to see him play, and so I hustled out after work from Detroit to get back to the Quad Cities. Had gone over to his mother's house to visit with her. Saw that there was a big limb that had fallen out of one of her trees in the front yard and was crossing the sidewalk. So I had picked up the limb late in the afternoon, about 4:30 I suppose it was, put it in the back of my truck and was going to drive it over here by my house because I have the ravine on my property. And as I was taking the limb out of the truck, I was hearing a cry for help. I soon found out that it was Pastor Rick. I certainly could have decided to decline coming back to Moline on that Thursday night. I had another job that was requiring me to be in Chicago on Saturday morning. And instead of hustling back Thursday evening to Moline, I could have stayed in Chicago. But along with that, there's a sequence of events that happened that I believe that the Lord put me in the place that I was supposed to be
What a pleasant sound it was at 20 minutes to 6 when I heard someone's voice saying, "Is there somebody down there?" I looked over my shoulder and I could see the neighbor, but he couldn't see me. And I began to yell, "Yes, there's somebody down here." And he began to make his way around the edge of the ravine trying to find an angle to see me. When he saw me, it wasn't but just a moment that he had his cell phone out and was calling 911, and a rescue had begun. He made his way down the ravine then, and it was good that he happens to be 6'10", a real sturdy guy, a strong fella that was able to lift up that tractor. And I couldn't move my foot. I'd been under there too long, but I grabbed it with my arms and pulled it out from under there. And then the beautiful sound of the sirens that I heard in the distance coming our way. And they came and stopped, and the paramedics and the firemen and the police all working together, 9 of them working together to get me on a cart and to begin to lift me up out of this ravine. That was a great moment, a moment that I knew that my critical moment in life was over and I was going to be okay. I'm mobile today, I'm alive today because of God's grace in my life. They rushed me to the hospital in an ambulance, and it wasn't long till my wife was there and all my boys. But x-rays showed no broken bones. I didn't have ligament damage or tendon damage, just some nerve damage in my left foot that I still deal with today. But it was so minor compared to what it could have been. I'm so grateful for the grace of God, His protection on that critical day. He truly is a good God.